guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Caira. I make videos all about Chicago, apartments, a little bit of Trader Joe's, but today's video is answering some of your guys' questions about apartment hunting. If you didn't know, I am a leasing agent here in Chicago. I work with Compass, and so my job is that I get to help you guys find your dream apartments in the city, and it is so much fun. I literally love my job so much, but because of this, I get tons of DMs all the time about different questions about apartment hunting in the city, and so I have a couple of videos on this topic already for you to go ahead and check out. I'll put those links down in the description box, but here's another video just in case I haven't answered these questions before for you guys to see of different things that you wanted to know about apartment hunting in Chicago. I do these videos time to time, and I'll pop a question box up on my Instagram and I'll ask you guys to put in your input. If you don't follow me on Instagram already, highly recommend doing so. I also post a ton of apartment content over there as well, so that's a really great resource. But that's where these questions came from today. Also, if you haven't already, please hit that big red subscribe button. I post a video every 3 days, and if this is a type of video that you like, please give me a thumbs up. It helps me understand what you guys are kind of into, as well as also just does me a little bit of a favor with the YouTube algorithm. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So this first question says, how should one go about finding their first apartment post-graduation? Number one, congratulations on graduating. That's a feat on its own. And number two, you kind of do need to have your job lined up first. So I'm gonna go about this in the position of like, let's assume you have your first job and then finding your apartment to go with it from there. Basically, in order for you to get an apartment, you will need to show financial qualification. That can be either an offer letter for a job that you're starting if you're moving somewhere new for a new job, like if you live in Iowa and are moving to Chicago to come work here, or it can be your last 2 pay stubs if you are already working in that current job. So let's break this down as a good little example, actually. So let's say that you just got your first offer for your first full-time job. And let's say you're starting at a $50K salary. Congratulations, that's awesome. So 50K, divide that up by 12. You are making $4,166 monthly. In order to financially qualify for apartment buildings, you will need to be making somewhere between 2.5 to 3 times the monthly rent in your gross income. So that would be based off of that 50K starting salary, not based off of what is your take home after taxes and after your 401k contribution and your health insurance and all of those things. It's just based off of that gross salary. So if you have a 50K job, that means you have just over $4,000 a month in your gross. So let's say you're looking at an apartment building that is based off of 2.5 times the monthly rent. So you would be able to afford an apartment that is $1,666 a month. Bad luck of a number to pick, but that gives you an idea, so you can kind of be able to gauge from there what is the budget that you're playing with of what you could get in the city, and then kind of go from there. My personal suggestion is if you're starting out, you can always move into nicer apartments, but find something that you're not going to be completely house poor on. You don't want your entire income going towards your rent for your first apartment. You want to be able to have play money to be able to like go out and explore the new city that you're living in. And also, if you haven't already, highly consider living in a studio. I highly recommend living in a studio. I absolutely love studio apartments. I think people have this weird misconception that they need to have their bed in a separate room. You are living by yourself. It will save you so much money to look at studios versus one beds. Like that is the easiest way for people to fall into like financial traps, in my opinion, is if they really only focus on only looking at one beds. It is so much more expensive. I have a whole video already about should you get roommates versus live on your own. And that kind of talks about why one beds are super expensive if you're looking to live by yourself and trying to save money, but that's a video for another time. The link's in the description box. All right, next question. Any tips for finding roommates? I'm a little bit of an anomaly because I've never had to do the roommate thing. I had roommates in college. I moved in with a friend from college right after college. Then I had my studio apartment that I lived in on my own. And then I moved in with my then boyfriend, now fiance, and we've been living together ever since. So I've never had to go about finding random roommates. However, I've had a lot of friends who have done it, and there are so many ways. I've had friends who have done Craigslist and whatnot. I think people might still be trying to find roommates on Craigslist, but like it's also 2022, so maybe not. But Facebook groups is a huge one. There's a Facebook group called One Drink In, and I know they have it in Chicago. I think they have it in other cities too, but I know a lot of people have found their roommates and friends through One Drink In. Bumble BFF is also awesome. That's how I made so many of my friends when I first moved to Chicago. And when I was on Bumble BFF, there was a lot of people on there that were like, hey, I'm on Bumble BFF trying to find roommates. Is anyone interested? Facebook Marketplace, I see a lot of people posting on there, especially when like there's 2 people and they have a 3rd bedroom that they're trying to fill. I see ads on Facebook Marketplace for those popping up a lot. And also just ask around. I think that's something that like people just don't tap into enough because they get nervous. this, but especially here in Chicago, people are so willing to help and try and like do what they can for someone else, that if you ask around and like let people know that you are looking for roommates and if they hear of anybody who has an opening in a spot, people will help. Like, it just happens. It's such a great community. So that's another way that could work out really well for you. All right, this question says, is it a waste of time to tour apartments to manifest? I'm dying to move out. Yes. I don't like saying that answer because like waste of time just sounds kind of harsh, and also like I'm not trying to crush your dreams here. Touring apartments when you don't have an actual like move-in and you're not gonna be applying, the buildings aren't gonna be happy that you're doing it because you're taking up a time slot from someone that could be an actual client putting in a lease today. And the buildings will ask when you go on your tour, when is your move date? What is your budget? And if they don't have anything to show for that move date, like if you're looking to move in a year or something, they're gonna be like, what are we doing here? Like, I can't show you anything. I don't know what prices are going to be 3 months from now, let alone what they're going to be in a year from now. So the buildings don't necessarily like doing it. And also just on your end, a lot of times buildings offer look and lease specials where if you tour a building and then you apply between 24 to 48 hours afterwards, they will credit your admin fee back to you, which is usually about $450. If you tour prematurely and then are like, okay, you know what, that building was the one for me, I'm going to put in my application, and it's been a couple of months, you don't get that same look and lease. Sometimes buildings will let you tour again to get it, but not always. I've had a building give like a hard no and be like, no, she toured back then and she didn't want to put in her application then, so she doesn't get a look and lease. So it can come back to bite you as well. Also, just because prices change all the time. Like, prices literally fluctuate like airline tickets. They go up and down all over the place. So if you are wanting to move in a couple of months and you go and tour somewhere and get your heart absolutely dead set on it now, that place could legit be $600 more a month in 6 months from now. I have seen prices of apartments go up $900 overnight. I'm not kidding. That was an extreme example, but it's happened. And so I'd hate for you to tour and like kind of get your heart stuck on something, and then when it comes actually time to applying, you can't afford it, and then you're just like sad because you don't get your dream apartment. How many apartments should we look at to make sure we land on the right apartment? So no more than 4. Like, I want to narrow that in so hard. Don't look at anything more than 4 because you're just going to feel so overwhelmed. And specifically, if you're working with someone like myself, I can't speak for all leasing agents, but the way that I do it is there are hundreds of buildings in Chicago. There are so many buildings in this city. And I have a curated list that I like to use of like roughly 200 of all of the top buildings that I know have great management, that have really good prices, really good reviews. All of my clients have loved living in them. That's the list that I kind of go off of. From there, I look at what your needs and wants and desires are, and I kind of narrow it down to be like, all right, this is the area you want to be in, this is the budget you want to be in, these are your must-haves. And then I select a list of like usually like 7-ish to send over to be like, all right, here's the ones that I think are your best options. I've had people come back and be like, all right, perfect, I like this one, I want to tour, I'm going to apply, boom, done. That's beautiful. I love having a decisive client, but some people want to do more. And I've had people come back and be like, I want to tour all 7. And I always have the conversation of being like, look, it takes an hour to tour each building. Honestly, you will be exhausted after 4 and it just becomes super overwhelming and they're all going to blend together. Let's talk through these a little bit more and I can help narrow down to a top 4 that I think would be worth you spending the time to go see in person. Because honestly, I can help weed out things that you might not think of until you're there on site. So I always say 4 or less. You can't do too few. Like, I'm sending you such a curated list that I promise you could pick any of the ones off of the list that I send you and you would absolutely love it. But you don't want to see any more than 4. What can clients do themselves to make the process of finding a place easier? Work with a leasing agent. My job is to find the place for you and make it as easy as possible. Really, as a client, there's nothing else that you need to do. I have had clients who have come to me bawling because they've been so stressed about figuring it out. Also, Alex and I say it to each other all the time. I don't know how someone would do it without a leasing agent. You're really at the luck of the draw. There is so much back and forth that has to happen with the buildings. So often I have issues with buildings when touring of like, they didn't have us on the books, or maybe they had us on the books for the wrong time, or they just never sent the tour follow-up, or all of these things. And my job is to take all of the stress of that out of the situation so you don't have to deal with it, and I can make it as seamless for you as possible and make sure that you have every single question answered. If you're working with a leasing agent, there's nothing that you should have to do in addition to make it easier for you. It should be super easy, I promise. As far as when it comes to touring, the only thing that you need to have on you is your ID. They'll need to take a photo of your ID in order for you to tour. And when it comes to actually applying, you will need to have a photo of your ID to put into your application, as well as your proof of income. Your proof of income can either be your last 2 pay stubs or your offer letter, like I mentioned in the beginning. But besides that, figure out what neighborhood you want to be in. Talk to your leasing agent about what is realistic budgets, because that's something that we can kind of run into, is like people will really not know what to expect. Like Chicago is still a big city, even though it's one of the more affordable big cities in the States. It's still a big city and it's still pricier. So you're going to want to be able to like understand what that looks like for you. But work with a leasing agent and it should be easy and seamless. All right, this next question, how much are furnished apartments and how common are they? Very expensive, very uncommon. Like furnished apartments hardly ever exist. It is super, super rare. When they do exist, typically they are meant for short-term rentals and for like corporate housing. So they'll be crazy expensive because when big companies need to send somebody to the city to work here for like a 3-month project or something, the big companies will pay it because it's an expense for them. But it makes it really unobtainable for like the average person who's moving to the city that wants to like doesn't want to get furniture and stuff. Like it is so much cheaper to just order yourself basic furniture over only looking at furnished options. They're so rare, so expensive. I have seen studio apartments starting at $3,600 for a furnished apartment. It doesn't make any sense. You are so much better off. Get yourself a regular apartment, order like a bed and a table and a chair from IKEA and call it a day, because if you're only looking at furnished, it doesn't make any sense and you'll have such limited options to look at. How do you know what's available apartment-wise? Is there a search filter to make it easier to navigate? No. Like that, it's why my job exists. I literally, like Alex's basic full-time job, he keeps this spreadsheet up to date of all of the apartment options in Chicago because there's nothing that pulls everything for you. Like you can't trust Zillow, you can't trust Trulia, you can't trust Apartments Pads, you can't trust apartments.com. All of those are like wildly out of date because these prices change every single day and anyone is able to post on those websites. So it's not tied to the MLS. Those websites are like a third party. So we see fake, inaccurate listings on there all the time of just being like, it'll show like one address. I just had someone send me one recently and they put the address down and I went to go look it up and I was like, I know that address. It was a Whole Foods, but they said that was the address of the apartment complex. It was not. And then also like it said it was a specific price. I could tell from the photos which apartment complex it was. And I was like, that building does not have units at that price point. All of the units are literally $500 more than what they're claiming. And it's also not even at that address. So those are super unreliable. Literally what we do is we have to go to every single apartment's website and pull the pricing for them daily because there is not an easy way to do it. That's why, again, I recommend working with a leasing agent because it's so difficult. I just talked about this in my previous video of like what it's like to be a leasing agent and someone said, could you do this as a part-time job? And I literally say no because it takes so much time to be super knowledgeable about all of the buildings in the city that I don't know how you could do this part-time and give the best options possible to your client because there's just so much information that you have to go out there and get yourself. Biggest apartment red flags for online listings. Okay, specifically for online listings, trust your gut because if you see that there is a 2-bed listed at $1,100, either it's a death trap or it's just fake. Like there are so many listings on there that just aren't even real. So if something seems fishy and it doesn't seem accurate, trust your gut on that because it's probably not. Biggest red flag when touring buildings. This might just be a personal thing. I really hate when leasing agents like really sugarcoat everything. Like, I don't know, like when they try and make every single thing seem too glamorous. Like I just toured a building the other day and the view was literally like a brick wall with a fire escape. And she was like, and this is our beautiful, like I call it our Brooklyn view. And I just kind of hate that because I would rather someone be really transparent and be like, yeah, and honestly, like, as you can tell, this one doesn't get a ton of light, but like you said, that's not something that's important to you. So I think that, how does this seem? Does this seem okay? Or are you still interested? Instead of like trying to hype up something that like, you know, isn't everyone's cup of tea. Does that make sense? This one's kind of hard for me because I, again, only show buildings that like I think are great that I would live in myself. So I'm not looking at a bunch of buildings that have a bunch of red flags for me, but trust your gut. Always trust your gut. That's a lot of talking. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I did not mean for it to be this long, but hopefully this answered some of your questions. Like I said, I have a bunch of other videos on questions for apartment hunting in Chicago, so check those out as well. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, feel free to put them in the comment box and I will try and respond to them down there. Or I will probably just do another, like, what am I at? Part 6 of apartment videos at this point. And of course, if you haven't, hit that big red subscribe button. I post a video every 3 days and I would love for you to follow along. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you next time.